why I have to, because I'm already off parole. And I said, well, are you going to stop? I was like, all you got to do is stay in this class for 3 months and then you're done. 6 months later, he's still in my class yelling. And then until finally he, I was like, so what is so wrong with life that you can't stop smoking weed? Because he was like, I cut back. Give me a break. I was like, I thought you could quit cold turkey. He was like, he was like, I just can't deal with life on life terms. And after like over 6 months of being in my group, and he was only supposed to be in there for three, it
Mm.
finally comes out that like his dad used to beat the mess out of him, and he used to, he was molested, and it's so many things. And his way of dealing with it was drinking and smoking. And but
Mm.
everybody just kept telling him just stop, because no, everybody's like, weed is not addictive. You can't. Uh, this dude was about to have a breakdown when I said stop smoking weed. You know,
Mm.
and drinking, and it's nobody's ever addressed that part of his problem.
Wow. Yeah. Well, first of all, I just pressed the record button.
Oh,
I got to start over. I just want to say this is What's the Lesson podcast. Comedian Von Michael here. I have my friend Simone. Simone, can you give them just your title again?
yeah.
Um,
I'm a substance abuse counselor. I have been doing substance abuse counseling for probation and in different correctional facilities for 8 years.
Dope.
Um,
Yeah. And that story, I got that story recorded, so everybody, it's going to start. The podcast is going to start right there.
okay.
And I think that's a great way to start in this, because one thing that you said, that this person, they, drink alcohol and they also smoke weed. And, for me, part of my sobriety, I was smoking weed and drinking alcohol. Um, but before we started recording, I was talking about how my first addiction was essentially sugar, cakes, pies, soda. Like, they got bad for me. You know how you ever watched the movie Ray Charles?
Yes.
And when he had to go to rehab and how like he was shaking,
Mhm.
like, yeah, like when I was a kid and my parents took away soda from me, I was shaking like that, like Ray Charles in the movie. And like it was like I was in rehab. And it was
Mm.
so bad. Like I was in summer break and it was just like, yo, I can't go to school and sneak no snacks. Like I'm at home. They took away all the sugar. Like it was I like, and they would laugh at it just like, yo, this is so crazy. But looking back at it now, like, and understanding like
Mhm.
that is actually an issue. So that's where it started for me, the addiction part. Um, so as I got older, one of my reasons why it took me a while to get into drugs and alcohol personally, because my dad is a recovering alcoholic, and I always had the fear of becoming like him. So my biggest thing was like, I'm not gonna drink because I seen what I did to him, and I'm staying away from it. However, I was eating crazy. Like I got diabetes by the age of 24, and it you know I never learned. I never learned how to process emotions, because I think that's what essentially a lot of this, what it boils down to, is processing your emotions, how to deal with them and stuff like that. And I think it's just part of the culture, especially for men. We not even we
Mhm.
told we gotta suck it up, we gotta walk it off. My first breakup, I told you I'm eating cake, and I remember I'm sad. My dad was just like, "Yo, you gotta get a job." So mind you, I'm in the third grade and I'm a mailman. Like, do you understand how crazy that is?
Mhm.
And it was just so I he was just like, don't really deal with it. Just like you gotta keep going, gotta keep going. So I never even processed that. And so I avoided relationships for a long time because of that feeling and that emotion, whatever. So, all right. So for me, start off as that, and then later high school years, I got introduced to weed. It was cool. Got introduced to alcohol. It was cool, but I wasn't really into it like that. For me personally, I feel like I went through like segments of my life. When I turned 20, 21. That's when I really started drinking heavily. And I would go to the clubs, and it was just kind of one of them things where it was just like all my friends were doing it. It was cool. We drinked, and we would like. I think there's a part of your time in your life where like you just drink to be dumb. Like we won't,
Mm-hmm.
we would just like take like looking back at it now. We were just taking shots of vodka, like 7 shots of vodka within an hour, and we was just it was just the cool thing to do. It was to drink. But as I transitioned to like my mid 20s, and I'm working and stuff like that, that's when I started experiencing loneliness, and then that's when I started to really start drinking. I'd be at home drinking by myself, um, and then I also would dabble into weed. It was kind of like I'll go off one and go on to the other one because I was like, if I stay on one of these too long, I'm gonna become addicted. So I was like, all right, I did this for 4 months. I got to stop that now. And I was like, all right, I'm just gonna smoke weed. And then I would just stop altogether because I was like, oh man, this is starting to become too much. I don't need to be doing, all of that. Um, so that was my mid 20s. I started doing comedy. I started off sober, and I'm in my late started comedy going to my later 20s. I started I started going on tour, and I was like I got really nervous on stage. Once again, going back to those emotions.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, all right, I'm gonna drink when I get on stage. I'm gonna drink every time I start to perform. And the crazy part is, I was like, all right, that's cool. And I didn't even think about it. Then 10 months go past. I'm like, I'm not an alcoholic. I'm gonna drink when I go on stage. Then I was like, wait a minute. I'm getting on stage 6 nights a week. I'm like, yo, I'm an alcoholic. And it's crazy because two things happened to me. First thing was I remember I had a show. It was New Year's Eve. I was on stage. And it's so crazy because this was a year ago for me. I literally just got the Facebook memory. I was 100 pounds heavier, and I was on stage with the mic in my hand, asking the bartender to bring me another vodka water on stage. And my parents came to the show. My dad, once he was alcoholic all my life, and he he got clean when I was 21. So I'm 27 at this time.
Mm-hmm.
27. He's been clean roughly about 6 years, and he was like, after the show, he was like, I just wanted to let you know that, becoming an alcoholic doesn't just happen overnight. Like, you really need to be careful
Mm-hmm.
what you're doing. He was like, it runs in the family. And when he said that, I was just like, how dare you call me an alcoholic? Like, I was in
Right.
denial. Like, I was like, bro, I'm not an alcoholic, fam. Did you just see me do all them jokes on stage?
Right.
I was prideful. And so he said that, and then he planted the seed in my head because change doesn't happen overnight. Just like becoming an alcoholic doesn't happen overnight. Change doesn't happen overnight. So he planted the seed going to the new year, and then I started to think about it, this is the thing. You okay over there?
Yeah, sorry. I
Uh,
had to hiccup. I was trying not to do it out loud.
I was about to say, I hope you don't got the corona. It sounded like you was about to sneeze. It's like that new strain out. You all right? So all right, so New Year and everything. All right, this is the biggest thing, and I'm gonna go down the story of me quitting the process of drinking. Um, Sometimes you can. I felt like as I was getting in my later 20s, I could look at certain people and be like, I'm headed in that direction. I'm like, if I keep doing what I'm doing, I'm gonna be like this person, and I'm like, I don't want to be like that. And at that point, I had a friend. I wouldn't say friend. I had an associate that was like a alcoholic. It actually was a roommate at that point. It was an alcoholic. Like drink when they woke up in the morning. Like
Mm,
start drinking at 10 a.m. And one thing for me is, and looking at now, this is a whole other story that go down a segue. I feel like that played into some triggers as well from like my childhood, like being around somebody like that. And my dad was like that, and I feel like that could definitely. But when I saw this person doing that, and then like how they were just like at night be like real drunk and just like every day, and I was just like in my head, I just like I had that moment. It was just like, if I don't get my stuff together, that's gonna be me. If I
mm,
don't learn how to deal with my emotions, I'm gonna be just like this person. And, and I was thinking about my dad. And I was like, I need to get clean. And I was on a road in Florida, and I remember I was like talking to the bartender, not a waitress, and I was just like, I'm trying not to drink this show. And that first show, right? I felt like I wanted to drink. It was crazy. It was. I remember going on stage, and nobody was. Alcohol made me feel more comfortable on stage. So I was on stage and nobody was laughing. And I do this thing when I wasn't drinking. I would avoid looking at the crowd, and so nobody's laughing. I hit them with my three hardest jokes, and then I looked at the crowd and I realized they were all senior citizens. And then I looked real closely, and they all was turning up their hearing aids.
uh,
So I was like, oh, I was like, oh, this ain't the alcohol fault. This is their fault. They can't hear. But I would say that show I felt the pull though. Like all jokes aside, I did feel a pull of just like I needed to get a drink, and it was like um it was a wake up call for me. I called one of my friends and I was just like, yo, I got an issue. And they was like, you can do this. You just got to make that step. And then that was the day last year, January, I quit drinking, which I'm coming up on a year now of no longer drinking. And, but the thing was, I was still smoking weed for about a month. And the smoking weed thing, I need weed for my anxiety. Because this culture, that's what they tell you now. They like weed is to help you for your anxiety. And weed was making my anxiety worse. I would say this. First of all, actually, I was thinking to myself the other day, I actually been the happiest. I haven't had any anxiety in almost 6 months. And I realized that it wasn't even um and I don't smoke weed or nothing like that. It was a lot of being in toxic environments. That was the real thing that I needed to get out of my life.
mm,
Um, but the weed would make it worse because one thing I would do, I would have these panic attacks smoking weed. My dad, when I was a kid, he always told me, he was like, "Hey, don't smoke weed because people lace that with other drugs. Weed is a gateway to cocaine." I started smoking
definitely.
weed. You agree with that?
Oh yeah, three of the guys that I grew up with that was like almost like my big brothers.
Mm-hmm.
They got hooked on hardcore drugs. Well, two of them were like brothers to me. One of them I was like their best friend.
Mm-hmm.
They the dude that they knew they got the drugs from was somebody they grew up with. He laced it, and they was off to the races after that. Because if
Mm-hmm.
it's your body's drug of choice, it's a wrap.
Mm-hmm.
You tried that one time. Because they was all just in the weed. Two of them had college scholarships for sports.
Mm-hmm.
Never even made it.
Yeah, and that
Didn't
was
even
my
make it to
fear.
college. Yeah.
I was having panic attacks. Like I would smoke weed, and then I wake up in the middle of the night and like just having. And first of all, I didn't even know what a panic attack was. I was just like, I was calling random people, confessing to crimes, feeling guilty, saying I'm sorry, and it was just like, and I went to the I called my dad. He was like, "Yo, your weed probably laced." I went to the hospital 3 times because I thought I was having panic attacks after smoking weed, and finally like the third time they sent me to over there where the rehab program, and the dude was like, "That's your subconscious telling you that you're you're seeing yourself going to graduating to a harder drug." and he was like, because he was recovering somebody that used to smoke crack, and he was like, he wished that he had listened to that, you know, before he got into the harder drugs, and he was like, yeah, you should stop now. And so that's for me. That's when I had the decision. I was like, okay, I got to quit smoking as well, and that was the next month. So um, and that was, I would say weed for me was harder though, because weed is like
Mm-hmm. It's the belief system.
yeah, because I was just like, weed is good for you, like, and that was another one that snuck up on me. And I
And
think
that's,
that's the biggest thing about addiction. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I always say, whoever came up with the advertisement for weed was a genius. Because people be quoting the same thing over and over again about weed, but don't know nothing for real.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, I use a double negative about it. Like they don't know any real information. They just know what they've been sold on it. And I tell them, I was like, cause you know it, because I was like, you come from this side of town, you from this city, you from
Mm-hmm.
New York, and all of y'all saying the same thing about weed.
Mm-hmm.
That's called advertisement and subliminal messaging.
Yeah.
I was like that because it weed does not affect everybody the same. Weed
Right.
weed makes ADHD people normal because we're hyper. We think fast, we move fast, we can't sit still. It calms us down. If you're not hyper, it dumbs you down, and then it can also make you paranoid.
Yes, that's what it was
And
doing for me.
and you cannot smoke weed and take lithium. You will have a
Lithium.
psychotic break.
Is that a battery? Lithium? It's like
Mm,
a Duracell.
it's a very strong antipsychotic.
Oh, okay. I was about to say, is the bunny? Yeah, I definitely
Like
seen that on the
lithium battery,
periodic
yeah, I know,
table.
right? And he's like, I'm gonna tell you the funniest thing was Medea put it in her one of her movies, where her light skinned friend was on it, and they was like, you know, you can't be smoking weed, you gonna start seeing things, and as soon as she's smoking, she's swatting at stuff that ain't won't even there. And
That's so funny.
I was like, people just don't know how true that is, because everybody
No.
has this myth that weed only like chills you out, and it does all this good. It does not always do good.
Right. And yeah, I definitely want to touch on that. So I want to hit on the weed, and then I want to go back on the alcohol.
Okay.
So the weed, that there is so many myths about how great it is for you. Um, they talk about it cures anxiety. For me, it made my anxiety worse. Um, it was supposed to put you at ease, put you at a peace of mind, and I honestly, I feel like I'm at my best life right now, not smoking weed. Like I have never mentally been in a better place. I'm more concentrated, more focused. Um, Being sober to me is like the thing that need to be advertised, because it's like the weed. I just felt like I was dumbed down, and it was just like I was just always wanted to just chill. And people that smoke weed have great ideas, but they never execute it because they go to sleep. That's how I always felt about it. Like, go
Sometimes they have good ideas. Sometimes it only sounds good because you high with them.
ahead.
You be like, yeah, man. Man, let me tell you, my clients be coming in with some of the dumbest ideas, and I feel
Mhm.
like, and then everybody in there that smoke weed be like, yeah. I'm like, you know how stupid that and like I have a rapport with them, so I talk like that with them. It's not like me putting them down because
Mhm.
they know I'm a comedian. I'm a crack on them.
Mhm.
I said, you know, I was like, let me run this back to you, and let me see if it sounds good to you when I say it this way. And they be like, yeah, you're right. I I'm,
That's funny.
I'm like
Um,
sometimes they be coming up with the craziest stuff.
and I started smoking heavily, especially when I went through a breakup because I wanted to break up like late last year, and I was just smoking weed because that was helping me deal with the pain. And the crazy part was though, but it was like I needed more weed to like it was cool at first. I was only smoking a little bit, but it was like I needed more, more, more. And like the new weed they have is very
Mhm.
strong, but it doesn't last long. And it feel like you just got to keep smoking to get high, get high, get high. And it's like, and it feel like it starts making you kind of whatever they put in this new stuff. They said that the weed nowadays isn't the same as the weed in the '60s. First of all,
Oh,
um,
absolutely not. It is genetically modified, and who knows what other chemicals are in it to get it to do what it does.
right. And this is what I want. I know we talked about this, and because I feel like I have a lot of friends, especially like once I decided to go. So one of the biggest hardest thing was is that I had to stop hanging around people that did drugs and alcohol.
Mhm.
Um, I remember one friend had a conversation with them, and I was just like, I'm not smoking weed. It was like, well, yeah, because you using weed to cope. I use weed because I just want to have a good time. I just come home, smoke a joint, and smoke weed. But I remember talking to you about that, and you made me realize that a lot of people don't know that they have an issue.
Mhm.
That they just tell themselves something so they don't feel like they have an issue. Um, and I feel like that's why a lot of people don't see weed in a bad way.
Mhm.
Um, Second thing I had to deal with was other people taking it personal. Because I told some people I was like, "Hey, I can't hang around with you. You smoking and drinking. I mean, if you want to catch tea, go get tea sometime. That's cool, but I'm not around that." And I personally had somebody tell me that was like, "Oh, you must not be strong enough um, to hang
Mm.
around me." It was like I know other people that's in recovery or been sober, and they don't have no problem. It's like something must be wrong with you, and I'm just like, whoa, like that threw me off guard. Like it's kind of
Mhm.
like,
Yeah.
and
No.
yeah, and it was so crazy because this person, they when I was telling them about my journey, and I was like, yo, I've been doing this for 10 months, and they were like, try doing it for 6 years. That's where I'm at, and it was almost like to the point it was just like, I'm in this. I can't. There's no going back, and it's like it was crazy, but like, and and I want to say anybody that's going through the process of getting sober, it is tough. Like you will feel like that you can't create new friends. You'll feel like everything that you know, because a lot of your friends that you are who you hang around. So if you smoke weed, most people you hang around smoke weed. If you drink, most people you hang around
Mhm.
drink, and you are going to go through a phase where you're going to feel alone, and it's going to be like that circle. You're going to feel like you're the outcast, like you're not um you're the crazy one. But the great thing is that with time you will start to attract more people that's like you.
Yes.
um and you'll start to realize that there's a whole world of people that's similar, like minded, but you just got to give it time. It's not going to happen overnight, just like becoming an alcoholic or a pothead happens overnight. Um, but yeah, so what I want to get to you is that what do you think about? Because one of my biggest things was I work in an environment that I'm a comedian. That's it's pretty much everybody drinks, smoke, like it's just
Mhm.
the lifestyle. Um, do you have any advice for people that work in an environment that's like that, but want to remain sober?
Um, I'm gonna say it. You have to seriously address the underlying issues, the root causes of it. If you're gonna be in that environment, I'll tell you the you want to know awkward is going to an open mic and telling people you're a substance abuse counselor while they got a beer in one hand and a shot in another and about to go outside and smoke a cigarette. It's the most awkward shut down any vibe it that you could do. It's just like everybody just gets awkward as soon as I say it. But you just it's all about your beliefs and your mindset. And if you're going to survive it, I highly recommend that if you can for the first maybe 6 months not work in an environment if you can. If not, try to find somebody there that does not use and just start talking with them no matter how boring they are, because they'll be your one constant in that stream. Because once you go sober, it's kind of like swimming upstream from everything that you know. Because you're so, like you
Right.
said, if you smoke or drink, then of course your friends smoke or drink. You know, we have a culture that teaches us it's normal. We have all these lies that we've been taught about alcohol. Like alcohol is a rite of passage when you turn 21. There's nothing
Mm-hmm.
wrong with weed. Everybody smoke weed. Everybody can't handle smoking weed. And
Mm-hmm.
if they can handle it, they probably ADHD, and it just makes them normal. Any regular person can't handle it and still get stuff accomplished. So you need that
Yeah.
one constant that it doesn't do it either if you're going to be in that environment. And you just have to have that one thing that you hold on to that makes you not want to
Right.
use.
And I want to be completely transparent with my process, because, all right, because I'm going to lay out what was going on for me. I literally had a roommate that smoked, drink every day from 11 a.m. to whenever they went to sleep. And I'm a comedian every night. I work in a bar and I work around other comics who
Hmm.
smoke, do other drugs and stuff like that. So, first thing I had to do was set a boundary with my roommate. I literally stopped talking to my roommate and it was just like, we can only talk about rent and that's it. Um, I had to cut off like the friendship part of it, because it was just like, we'd be friends, we start hanging out, and I said, you drinking, smoking, then it's like I gotta do like that. And then I feel like I had to become part of that. I mentally told myself that I was like, I'm making this change and I'm moving on. I'm gonna find a new circle of people. That was the first thing. Changing my mind mentally. It was like, I'm changing my circle and I got to get rid of everyone that goes down there. Then I set that boundary with my roommate. Work wise, being a comedian, because I didn't have the option of not being in an environment, because I got to make money, I got to eat.
Hmm.
Um, So what I would do is, when I go to shows now, it would strictly go there, do my set, sell my merch at the end, and then I would leave. It's no more hanging out. There was no more hanging around other comics or seeing what they were doing. It was strictly go to the show and then go back to my hotel. So I didn't even engage in the environment at all. And I do that now. I was just on the road about a month ago, and one of my boys, he was like, he's hanging out and stuff like that. I'm like, all right, I'm going back to the hotel. And it's so weird because it's like everybody like is like, oh man, like, because it's one of the pressures. People feel like you got to be a good hang, you got to impress
Hmm.
people, that peer pressure and stuff like that. And I'm a big believer in, especially in the field I'm in, that talent will always rise. Your talent will make room for you. And if you straightforward with people and be like, hey, look, I'm a sobriety and I don't want to put myself in this type of position, most people are cool with it. Most people are understanding. Even the people who are probably drink the smoke the most, they still know that it's like, man, being sober is a good thing.
Hmm.
Um, so I would say be straightforward with that. So that was, for me, how I put myself the boundaries I had to set. So it was mentally making that change, setting boundaries with people, friends who I knew smoked and drink. And then when I worked in that environment, it was about going there, knowing my purpose of where I'm going and why I'm going there, and just taking care of those things and leaving once I needed to leave. Um, and I felt lost for a while because this transition happened in February. We're in January now, February of 2020, and we're in January of 2021. And I would say that 2020 was like, and this is what I want to get your opinion on.
Hmm.
I feel like that, and I hear people say this, that even once you go sober, it still takes a while for the things to get out of your system. Um, I feel like that when I was smoking and drinking, I wasn't processing my emotions and things I was going through, and it was delaying things. But now that I'm sober, it seems like I'm able to process these emotions and like see things differently and heal. Um,
Yeah.
do you agree with that?
Yes. It stunts your emotional growth. It's um it can, depending on the age that you start, it stunts your maturity. Like like I had a lot of clients that started using when they were young because they grew up in toxic environments where they were given drugs and alcohol as a kid. And so like once they get sober, they don't know how to do anything really
Mm-hmm.
because they were high during the time that they were supposed to be learning how to be an adult. They were high when they were learning how to date and meet people and pick people. And when you
Mm-hmm.
high, you don't have any real preferences. And sometimes you be thinking you picking the hottest one out there. You got a dime and you really got like a three piece. Like it, like you got three pennies put together, thinking but you high. So you don't, it doesn't matter. Or you stay in a 5-year relationship with somebody you don't need to be in because you high to deal with the confrontation. You're high to deal with the things that make you uncomfortable. So you never learn how to do any of the things that sober adults do.
Right.
So your whole growth is stunted, and you
Yeah.
and it seems like an exaggeration, but it really isn't. Like the thought process, like my clients, like because like I'm a minister and I'm like I don't curse, except for every blue moon. I'm gonna be honest. Sometimes like if I'm in a lot of
Yeah.
pain, it'll slip out. Um, but they they're promiscuous, but they aren't comfortable talking about sex because in the book it was always uh yeah, it's like relation sex and dealing with sex and drugs, and they they could joke about sleeping with this person, that person, but when I made them talk about what it is about sex,
Mm-hmm.
do they have any preferences when it comes to sex? Or they'll be like, oh, if she's bad, I don't want her. I was like, well, just because you weren't happy with the sex doesn't mean she's bad at sex. You just didn't tell her what you wanted. And like that made
Mm.
them so uncomfortable because they never went through that phase of like discovering themselves or being able to talk about it. Nobody ever talked about it. It was just like you sleep with as many women as you can and that's it. They couldn't even they got 10 kids that can't and don't feel comfortable talking about condoms. Like, dude,
Mm.
um,
Wow. Yeah. And you know, and just that year, like now, I feel like I'm finally healing.
yes.
Um, from drinking and smoking like that, and I don't know. It just feels like I can finally see my purpose, and it's like, man, it's
Mhm.
like it also makes me realize a lot of stuff I thought I cared about, I don't care about. Um, and like the dumb stuff, it made me realize because I don't know, like when I got high and stuff like that and drunk. One thing I'm learning now is about boundaries, especially like with people. And it's like now it's like I'm more firm with setting boundaries and realizing how to stop the anxiety. Because once I figured out what my triggers were and what was really causing, I was like, oh, I don't need weed. I just need to do these things and I'll be just fine. Um, but yeah, but the thing is, and I feel bad for you because you said people miss a lot of these things once they're high. The culture, especially hip hop culture, all you hear is loud, smoking weed, and you got kids hearing this, and a lot of kids. I know a lot of people that's been smoking weed since they've been in high school,
I
and
know people that been smoking since they was like 10.
dang,
Yeah.
and so they're grown, they 30s and 40s, and it's like, um, as you're saying, you don't develop fully because of that. Um, but I guess my point is being sober is a great thing.
Mhm.
Um, and I feel like that I've gotten so much more done being sober, learning how to process those emotions. And the great thing is, it might seem like it's tough at first, but the more you do it, it becomes easier, just like with anything in life. Um,
The biggest thing that trips people up is the fear of the unknown, because drugs
mm,
have become such a culture, a big part of our culture. Like, you got all these rap songs talking about popping perks and mollies and everything else that's out there now, and
hmm
doing all kinds of drugs. Like when I grew up, they if they were rapping, they were talking about either selling drugs or trying to be positive. And now all the songs are talking about doing drugs. They're not even talking about selling half the time. So it's like drugs is what it is. Drugs is how
hmm
people deal with people. You know, you break up with your boyfriend or girlfriend, let's go get drinks, let's go to the club. It's they don't know any other way. And so a lot of times people don't want to get sober because they don't know what's going to happen when they get sober. How do you deal with life when you get sober? You don't know.
right.
You
And
know, they've been
go ahead.
ingrained that fun is equals alcohol and drugs.
Right. And what I've learned, come to learn, is when you face that unknown, that's when real growth comes. That's when that
Hmm.
confidence comes, when you face that fear. And then you won't be so dependent. When you learn that you can use fear to make you a better person and become more confident, you'll start to realize you don't need those substances to do that. Um, so,
Hmm.
what would you say to somebody, you know, that's young right now? They might smoke weed and or they might drink and they just might necessarily don't want to go to rehab. Um, because I feel like there's a stereotype to that. What would you say to them? The steps to getting sober, and if they live in an environment that everybody smokes and drink, do you have any steps for them to becoming sober?
One of the first steps is find a group that you can go to. Like everybody always says AA and NA, but they're more than just NA and AA out there. And even if it is NA or AA, you can find the ones that cater to your age group or what you've been through. Yeah, like Celebrate Recovery if you're a believer. They got the non-religious ones. It's There's more than one group to get involved in. And even if it's not specifically geared to helping you get over it, find a group that doesn't use drugs just to be around them, because as long as you're in that environment, you feel like salmon swimming upstream. You're fighting the current to get to where you need to be.
Okay, so
And
change your
you stop.
environment.
Yeah. So once you change your environment, change what you see every day, because what you see every day is what you believe.
Mm-hmm.
You see it every day. You hear it every day. That's how it, like, for example, I always say you wonder how people stay with cheaters. The cheaters repeat the same lie over and over again to the point that the other person starts to say, well, it must be true if they keep saying it. And
Mm-hmm.
eventually they start believing it. It's the same way with drugs and alcohol. So you have to get around people. Even it doesn't have to be like a AA group, just any group that doesn't use drugs that hang out. Because the more you start seeing people living a drug free lifestyle, the more you're able to believe it. And the more it starts to feel natural to you. You know,
Right.
that's the first step.
But what if you like you live in a neighborhood? I'll say personally for me is, I think I talked to you about this. Is I I spend a lot of time alone first of all because everybody that I know pretty much smokes and drink.
Mhm.
Um, I started to change the content that I listen to and watch
Mhm.
to help me out. I listen to more positive music, less of rap. Sometimes I still listen to rap, but like if I listen to like if you say you're a rap fan, because a lot of people don't like the Christian music. They say it's corny. One thing I do is whatever song I like, I'll just listen to the instrumental, and so it's
Mhm.
like that gives me the same feel for it. Um, Movies and stuff like that. I try to go through like a period where I only watch positive movies, spiritual, or something that's not based around drugs and alcohol. A lot of kids. I
Mhm.
watch a lot of kids movies.
Yeah, me
Um,
too.
so if that's been one of the biggest things that's really helped me out. Um, and you'll be surprised once you start talking about being sober. You'll be surprised. Like it's so weird because that show I told you I did in Florida, where I was like, I um I, I realized that I had a problem. It was the first time I quit drinking.
Mhm.
Um, Over this quarantine, the waitress I told that to had posted 2 years sobriety, and I DM'd her. I was like, I didn't know you were sober, and she was like, yeah, like that's why could really relate to you when you was there, and it was just like it was so crazy. Like I just would have never like I would have never known that if I didn't talk to her and stuff like that. So it's like be open to talking to people about it because it's like the people that are like minded find a way to you.
Mhm.
Um, that's worked for me, and yeah, those I would say are the biggest things. Don't hang around that. Know what your purpose is, and I want to hit on the last thing because you were saying in the beginning. Um, I think we already touched on it. You said it's the emotion itself. You don't always just blame the actual alcohol or drug. It's the actual emotions. Is the real root of the cause? Is what you were saying?
Well, emotions, it's a combination of trauma and belief systems.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so a lot of times, like any kind of addiction is born out of some sort of trauma, whether it's like abandonment, rejection, like a lot of rejection, neglect, abuse, um, whether it's verbal or physical, because sometimes we don't even recognize the verbal abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and especially like for like people that grow up in single parent households, you just like your daddy, or even in the two parent household, you just like your mama. Like it's a bad thing, and they make you feel bad for being that way. Or when you tell a kid you're
Mm-hmm.
just bad, what is wrong with you? You're just terrible. You're feeding, what you're doing is pouring into that addiction at a young age.
Mm-hmm.
And so these are all the things that you have to address to get past it. Recognize that you've been subliminally brainwashed with music, believing that,
Yeah.
think this is how it's supposed to be. Like, who says when you turn 21 you have to go get wasted?
Right.
There's no written law. that's just the age you could drink. Before it was 18, then it's 21, and then who knows what it'll be in the future. You know,
Right.
nobody says that. It's it's just passed down peer pressure, belief systems that we don't really need. Like
Mm,
all these people getting drunk on St. Patrick's Day. You're not Irish. Why are you getting drunk?
right.
Belief systems that
Um,
have to be addressed.
so what would you say? You say this trauma or whatever, abandonment you might got going on, right? And you got somebody who can't afford therapy because therapy can be very expensive. Um, what would you suggest with people, to do, or are there groups as well to if they want to start working on this, or will you prefer YouTube videos? Like, what kind of suggestions would you prefer to people who can't afford therapy to try to heal?
Um, I would do research because they do a lot of grants to different organizations to offer therapy to people that can't afford it. Like there's a
Mm,
lot of federal grants that goes out to different groups. If you look, you can definitely find it. Um, in the smaller towns, it'll be harder, but go to things like if you have Celebrate Recovery, because Celebrate Recovery is good if you don't mind the Bible. It takes the Bible verses. It takes it's like a combination of the AA steps, the Bible, and then helping you heal from trauma, like addresses different traumas. So it does like a combination of stuff. Um, and I've had clients that once they got out of the system, they did Celebrate Recovery, and some of them from the last time I ran into them were doing really good on that. They hadn't gotten in trouble again. They were sober. Like they had a zeal for life because it was not only just, telling them to stop using, but it was helping them address stuff.
gotcha.
Yeah.
All right.
So you got to get creative in looking for it, but it's out there.
To do the research.
Yes.
So I would say the biggest lesson I say I learned through this whole thing was for me is that it's a process. It's a process, and um, you just gotta kind of do it. And the fear of the unknown creates growth. Um, and being sober is actually way better than being drunk or high.
Mhm.
Um, so that was the biggest thing. So can people find you at social media wise, and do you have anything to promote?
I'm on Simone Lee on Instagram, J Simone on Facebook. I don't have anything to promote right now. But yeah, I hopefully we'll have some stuff soon.
Oh, all right. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
No doubt.